Hi, my name is Emma, for those who don't know. I became a born-again Christian I think it's about 3 years ago now, and maybe 3.5. And I've already done my testimony and it's on YouTube. But this video has been prompted by a kind of personal revelation, really, and it kind of just adds to my testimony of what God has done since in my life. You'll have to bear with me because I really don't like the camera, let alone videos. I never know where to look. So if my eyes keep wandering, that's why. Anyway, well, where do I start? I was a single parent for about 10 years, and I had 3 children, all quite close in age. And as a result of a choice of mine when they were little, a decision that I made that led to quite traumatic things in my family that I kind of thought was irredeemable, really. Anyway, I had, this is really about my oldest son. I had, I would say when he was younger, a better, quite good relationship with him, really. But over the years, and especially because of this particular traumatic event, and his anger towards me, which I could always understand, having been through similar things that he went through as a child, gave me that empathy, really. So for the sake of his privacy, I won't say his name or go into any more detail than that. But as he got older, that I believe because he couldn't aim it at himself or at the person who was actually the guilty party, if you like. He aimed it at me, and I kind of understood that because being his mom, and children, regardless, always look up to their parents, whether your mum or dad, to guide them, to protect them. And when something happens that where you may feel as a parent you've let your own child down through a wrong decision or a wrong turn or whatever, really, I'm sure there is a lot of people, a lot of mothers especially out there that can, and maybe even some fathers that can really relate to this. But my relationship with my son as he got older and became an adult became really quite toxic. And no matter how much I kind of go back and forth with him, something would always happen because that anger was there still. And also, I think from guilt as a mother was also there. So when he would come at me with all of this pain, really, which is what it was pain and confusion and anger, I would act in a defensive way because of that guilt. So I couldn't answer him gently or honestly and give him what he needed to heal, and for our relationship to heal, because when a family together goes through a traumatic thing, and you don't get the help that you need as a family and as individuals, but as a family as well, which we didn't for various reasons, it's really, really difficult, and you tend to project onto one another and you end up bouncing off one another, either through anger or guilt, or both. And your relationships can be really affected by that shared trauma. And you hear about it with couples as well, or say like people that have been in terrible accidents or through terrible ordeals together. Sometimes then when they're around one another, it just kind of triggers them a lot. And you know, when it's like parent and child, the child loves the parent loves the child, you would hope. I know that's not always the case, sadly, but mostly it is. And you have all that kind of maternal instinct as well, and you kind of have all that wrapped up in that too. And yeah, I mean, it is really, really complicated. It is what it is. But about, I don't know, quite a few years ago now, kind of had to back off, or felt like I had to back off from my son, because the relationship has become so toxic that I could see that it was damaging to both myself and to him. And I couldn't really see what good it was doing other than more harm. Now I'd kind of come to accept that relationship was irredeemable. I couldn't see any way that we could move on from this and heal enough to have not only a relationship, but a relationship worth having that wasn't going to be more damaging in the long run and just cause more hurt and pain and sorrow. And I really did feel that I just couldn't see a way forward at all whatsoever. And as a mother, that was really difficult to accept. And I really grieved over this. And although I distanced myself from my son, I felt out of kind of protecting myself and protecting him. It was incredibly difficult to be estranged from him. Now, fast forward to when I became born again, and every now and again, I, through this journey, would reach out to my son. I think as a mum, I wouldn't be able to leave it alone, really. Every now and again, I would just try again. And I don't know how long after it was I became born again, but I think it was within a year, really. But I remember reaching out to him again, just sending him a simple message. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I think I told him that I loved him and that I'd always be his mum. And nothing, I didn't get anything, I didn't get any reply for a few weeks. And then suddenly one evening I got a really angry reply that was just kind of blaming me for everything, which is kind of this cycle that he'd got into, that then every wrong turn that he made, every mistake that he made, he was just blaming me for. And you know, and just for how his life had gone, which I could understand to a degree, but at the same time we have to get to the point where we take responsibility for our choices and decisions and the consequences of those. But I always kind of had that empathy because I understood where all of this was coming from. Anyway, I was quite upset and hurt, which it was kind of like this cycle that we would go through. But within a few minutes, some reason it was like the veil had gone from my eyes, and instead of seeing my pain and my hurt, I could suddenly just see his pain. And I realised in that moment that this angry response that I kept getting really was a desperate cry for help. So all of the feelings and emotions that I had from his angry response, and it always felt like a kind of direct attack on me, I stopped really thinking about, and all I could see and all I could feel was how deeply he was affected and how deeply traumatized he was, and how much he was hurting and struggling and crying out for help. But I knew at the same time that as a mother, and how many times and how many years we've been back and forth, that there was absolutely nothing that I could do to actually heal this. There was just absolutely nothing I could do. I desperately wanted to be able to help my son, to heal him, to I suppose save him really from all of this. But I knew deep down that I'm just his mum, and I am just a woman, and I do not have that capacity. So I remember that night that for about 2 hours, I literally laid on my bed and just cried out. I mean, I was just in tears and really sobbing for him. And I know this is going to sound a really kind of strange thing for a mother to say, but I remember saying to the Lord, because my son, even from when he was quite young, always saw the good in people, but also he forgave really easily. But he seemed to believe that once he forgave, it meant that he could allow that person, or should allow that person, back into his life. And this kind of made him a target really, and by some very bad people, and got him into a lot of difficult situations, and peer pressured, and one thing and another. So it had a lot of trauma as well in his young adult life, which just was kind of trauma on top of trauma really. So I just remember saying to the Lord that, look, Lord, if, because he didn't know and doesn't know the Lord as yet, that if it took, if the enemy, if the devil was going to keep coming at him because of that innocence that he has, the way he looks at things, you know, that my son had suffered so much more than most people would ever suffer their whole life. And if he was going to keep being a target, but then if it entailed the Lord taking him now, but that was what was needed for him to see God and to know the Lord Jesus Christ, and I would know then that my son was safe, and he was out of pain, and he was feeling that amazing agape love that only God can give, then I actually said, you know, I would accept that, as much as it would grieve me. And I, in a way, I was kind of offering my son to the Lord and saying, look, God, I can't do anything. I'm just me. I'm just his mum. I cannot fix this. And literally handing him over to God. But, I do specifically remember through my floods of tears actually saying that to him and offering him and saying, look, his salvation for all eternity was more important than him just living his life out to a grand old age. Now, as much as any parent would really want that, his eternity was more important to me. The thought that he'd gone through so much in his life that then he could end up going through so much in hell just absolutely horrified me. And I was just like, this can't happen, to somebody with such an innocent outlook as my son. So I remember crying out to Jesus and really just sobbing my heart out. Well, a few months on from this, I got a message from my daughter saying that her brother had been in hospital. She didn't really know how serious it was, but he'd messaged her, and she felt saying that he was saying that he wanted to talk to me, and she felt that this time it was different. Well, I didn't really know what to think of this, because for years we've been back and forth, and it always fell apart, and it was always extremely stressful and more harmful in the end. So I prayed on it, but then I kept feeling the nudge from the Holy Spirit. So I messaged him first, and I got a different response, and then I rang him. And what he told me was that he'd taken a massive drug overdose. At the time, he had a drug problem, which he has not hidden from people. So I know it's all right to say he doesn't have that drug problem now, but he did at the time, and he'd taken a massive overdose. And actually, his heart stopped twice. One time in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and they had to pull over to start his heart again. And he woke up a day later in ICU. And he said, from that moment, all his anger towards me had dissipated, all of his hate, and all he wanted was his mum. And it was true, because from that moment, the Lord began healing our relationship, and it's got better and better. But it has been through as well that he has shown me that not only on the cross did he free me from my sins and give me eternal life, but he actually freed me from the guilt and the shame of all of my mistakes, and all of that thing that, that guilt that I'd carried for years, because no mother wants to make a decision or a choice that then has a really detrimental effect on their children. I mean, you just don't. And, so I kind of, I knew that the Lord had sort of took my son to the brink. He knew that that was what was going to take to break down the anger and hatred that he had towards me in his heart. But what I hadn't made the connection with, and he sort of revealed to me recently, was that in his absolutely amazing mercy, that not only had he heard my prayers and my cry for help for my son, but that he was sort of saying to me, Emma, I not only heard your prayers, but I'm going to do one better than that. And what he actually did on that day, when my son attempted to take his own life, and we wouldn't have known anything about it until after the fact, was that he broke down that barrier, that wall that was preventing us from reconnecting in a more positive way and healing. Because that kind of anger and resentment and hatred is not from God, it is from Satan. Because God is a God of redemption and restoration and light and healing and forgiveness. So what the Lord showed me was that not only did he do that, but then he decided to give me my son back. That relationship that I had always believed was completely irredeemable, that I would never be able to really have that relationship with my son again, that I was better off just distancing myself totally from him. And in fact, I think it'd been about 5-6 years that I'd been sort of estranged from him, really. And it was really hard, but in his amazing grace and mercy, he knew exactly what to do. But instead of actually answering my prayers to the point of taking my son, he actually restored him to me. And I know as well, and God has spoken to me about this, that he is coming after my son. He's chasing him. He has got him in his sights, and I know that my son will eventually have his own testimony, and it doesn't matter to me what the enemy might say, what people might say, because at the end of the day, I know the Lord's voice, and he has spoken to me. And so I believe and I trust in what he has said to me. So he's also given me that hope before the fact that my son will know him, will come to him, and will live eternally. And I just wanted to share that God's amazing mercy, but also the importance of we can only pray for people really from the heart when we let go of our own injury and stop looking at how someone has hurt us. And this is how some people, some Christians, have been able to cry out even for their enemies, because they've been shown by the Lord how to love people regardless of their treatment of you. And I suppose in a way it's easier for me with my son because he's my son. But you know, the amazing thing is as well that God not only decided to give me my earthly son back, but it really highlighted the fact as well that not only did he do this, but he gave his only son on a cross for you and I. And it just highlighted that to me even more. So I just hope that this video and this word blesses somebody today. And I just pray that if you have any guilt or any anger or hatred, that you would lay it down at the Lord's feet and begin to get that healing. Okay, God bless.